Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jack Callow with a special, very special edition of The Exchange. While normally we do try to announce our guests early on in the day, this one is a bit sudden, especially due to the bill that's recently been proposed, HR 336. So, here with me today, if you would please introduce yourselves.
Emilie Lillegard-Marino, State Representative.
Jack Burton, assistant to Miss Marino.
Wonderful. And like I said, normally I would have reached out, through proper channels, but this felt like a bit of an emergency, especially seeing as this bill has caused quite an uproar, especially with the wording. Even though they are claiming that it is worded properly, it seems that there's a lot of room for false or malicious interpretation. What are your thoughts?
But yes, as we all know, the police's responsibility is to interpret laws, and that is one such interpretation that the state would be absolutely correct, because that is an interpretation, and it is possible that the law could be used that way.
So, what you're saying is, even though they intend to uphold the law itself in a way that's not malicious, should they decide to, it can 100% be used in a malicious sense.
Yes, 100% it could be.
Agreed.
Now, another thing I noticed is when Lucas Evans introduced the bill, he said they had help from Duncan Murray and numerous individuals from different departments. Why is it that he was only able to name Duncan Murray, but everyone else from other departments is only listed as departments instead of specific people?
That I do not know. That would be a question to ask Lucas Evans, because I was not involved in any part in this bill. I found out about it the same time everybody else did. So I have no answer for you.
So what you're saying is he didn't even propose this bill to anyone else. He literally just went to the law enforcement branch.
To my knowledge, that is correct, yes. He didn't speak to me about it. I don't think he spoke to Lilith, Joanna, or Conrad. I might be wrong, but I don't believe he did.
Has this happened before where he's gone directly towards other government branches to discuss bills instead of discussing it with you prior to writing them?
Myself, he's done it before. He doesn't really speak to me. He just kind of does what he wants, and then I find out about things later.
And do you feel that brings a negative impact or a negative image to the rest of the state reps who are trying their best in order to fulfill the needs of the city?
Of course it does.
I'm not going to ask for your personal thoughts on Mr. Evans. I'm sure that whatever he does for a reason. Maybe he does it because he intends to do good. But
yeah, I can't make any comments about that because I hardly know him. I've only spoken to him like twice.
That being said, though, a lot of the bills that he has proposed as of late have been pretty heavily leaning towards one side, to a point where people have been rather outspoken about how they're worded because of the fact that they might be used maliciously. Not that they will. I have faith in the law enforcement to actually properly enforce laws. But there's a possibility, and that's what's scary.
But yes, any possibility is a bad thing and must be rectified immediately.
What are your personal thoughts on this bill, having read it and being a state rep that, would probably understand these processes and actual wordings and initiations better than me, who is a civilian?
As I said before, all laws are subject to interpretation, and one such interpretation is the interpretation that the state has come up with. As in the state, I mean the residents of San Andreas, which they are valid in their criticisms. And all public feedback is good. Sorry about that. I just wanted to pause for a moment.
No, it's okay. That's on me. Jack, as a civilian, putting aside the fact that you are Emilie's, assistant, but as a civilian, how does it make you feel to look at a law like this and not have any forewarning or foreshadowing that it was actually a possibility for it to be written and then the potential of it passing?
There's a few questions there. I'll address the last one, the potentiality of it passing. I hold strong that with the other members of the legislature as it stands right now, I think they will ask the appropriate questions and they will properly vet this before giving their vote. There will also be a state rep meeting soon where people will be able to voice their concerns over all of the different interpretations that have come out over the last 48 hours regarding this bill. I would feel comfortable if they all voted no on it. And based off of their historical voting record when it comes to some of these heavy-handed bills that seem to benefit law enforcement, which, to be fair, law enforcement does need some things on their end of things to better address certain situations they address, or certain situations that they have to address throughout the day. There are still ways to go about it where you need to involve the people and make sure that their best interests are kept in mind. Now, for the other question, you'd have to start off from the beginning because I got into a tangent there.
Yes, that is my fault on that one. So, I guess the bigger question is, like, I did ask how it made you feel as a civilian to see this pass without any forewarning.
Oh, I'm not happy about it at all. Depending on how you look at it, throughout the various interpretations that have been coming out over Yeeter for the last few days, I very well could be considered a part of one of these so-called gangs. I'll put those in quotation marks. I live with a number of individuals. It's a larger family that have a common name. Based off of that, that could be constituted as a gang. I hang out in certain places with other individuals. If all of a sudden something comes under investigation at that location, does that mean I'm now part of a gang? There are just too many vague possibilities within the current structure of this bill to where any and every citizen is potentially going to be classified as a gang member just because of their associations, places they frequent, social clubs they may gather with. I'm not saying everyone's perfect out there, but there are a lot of good people in the city, and there's too much going on within this bill that people are not going to get caught up in it, that have no business being caught up in it at all.
And while I said police do say they're not going to enforce the bill in that matter, it doesn't mean that they cannot be enforced in that matter. So the trust system kind of has to go into play, but at the same time, the trust system has been abused before.
We definitely play at a system to where everything is taken in good faith. We assume that the practice of law that the various members of law enforcement do around the state are going to be on the up and up, and they are following things to the letter, but with context taken in key. If someone is not involved in a certain situation, crime crisis doesn't apply to them. You would think that maybe something along these lines, that just because someone is a frequent visitor of an establishment somewhere in the city, that maybe could be the back end of something more nefarious, that they may get caught up in it, but hopefully PD will go ahead and understand that no, they are just an innocent bystander who happens to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. However, who is to say that there are not forces within law enforcement, and I hope this is not the case, that take this too far? They take it with too many broad strokes, and people do end up caught up in this. It's just, it's too big of a worry to just leave it as is. If something like this were ever to make it through the legislature, it would need to be something that is properly discussed amongst all parties involved within the legislation to make sure that everything is addressed and every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and just ultimately make sure that any possible thing is captured. And if there's not, we can always do an amendment later. But right now, the way it is, it's detrimental. Too many people are going to be affected by this if it gets in the wrong hands.
If I may add on to Jack's point, if I may.
By all means.
Case in point, the legislation mentions that gang members can be identified by tattoos, and I actually have a very specific tattoo that a lot of the other side of the law have. Therefore, by that definition, I could be identified as a gang member.
The Skinner's debacle with the octopus on the arm.
I was more speaking about the cross tattoo on my forehead.
Oh, yes, that too. But I do remember when Ju was on trial for murder that this came up.
Hmm.
I think if anything, though, that right there kind of points at an example. Emilie was worried about one tattoo. She had a completely separate tattoo that you pointed out. Who's to say the one that I have on my right arm right here with, an octopus is not going to get me in trouble? Or the one with the Spartan on my left arm is going to get me in trouble? Or anything I have underneath my shirt?
Also, of course, I have the bat on my throat.
Those are all very good points. Back to you, Miss State Rep.
Mhm.
I actually do have a question, and it is a concern
Okay.
now more than ever. If this bill does get voted down by a legislature, is there a possibility for presidential intervention again?
I believe there is, yes. Like, the presidential intervention in the appointment of Chris Stevens was unprecedented. Therefore, it opened the door for any number of possibilities or scenarios.
So
I'm going to lean towards yes, it is possible, because like we didn't think it was possible for the president to override the legislature of the state and decide Chris Stevens was going to be sheriff, and here we are.
That's a rather scary notion when you think about it, that any bill you pass that either favors the people or any bill you vote down that doesn't favor a certain party can just be turned around by some invisible hand that no one elected.
I don't know who elected the president. I didn't get a chance to vote for him, so I'm going to assume unelected.
That is crazy. But at the same time, it's something that's out of our control. Like, we're just one state in the vast United States.
Which the president represents the entire United States. So if there's a vote in the other states that we don't know about, how come we have a president that none of us in this state voted for? That is a concern.
But again, on that same point, though, the mutiny crisis only affected our state. Or did it? We don't know.
As far as I know, it only affected our state, but that could be why an election was passed over for our state. Our systems weren't exactly too secure. And that's a lot of personal data going in and out of one state.
It is.
But back on topic of this bill. While the wording of it is subjective, I understand why they would try to pass this for a second time. This would not be the first time someone in the legislature tries to pass this bill. And it also wouldn't be the first time.
Sorry. I thought you were finished. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It also wouldn't be the first time it's proposed by a state rep that hasn't been formally accused, but has been suspected of working for the government directly.
I can't speak to that. I have no idea about his extracurricular activities, so I can't speak about that.
No, of course, I'm not asking for a statement on that behalf. I'm just saying that, like, as far as I'm concerned, until I see bank records saying that he has not accepted money for lobbying, I'm not going to believe that he works for the people. But that's my personal opinion.
I mean, it seems like it, but we don't know. Like, that's all entirely speculation, and we know where we get if we speculate and things are wrong, and then we go publicly with those speculations. We know what happens.
Of course. I'm not accusing. I'm speculating.
Yeah, I know.
I just want
we're speculating.
For the DOJ, who's probably listening in on this right now. That being said, we are at a precipice, people of Los Santos. As you can see, some people have decided to be a bit more heavy-handed as they handle things. While not entirely unwarranted, given our rate of violence, I do feel it should have been discussed with the other state reps. And with elections coming up, I think it's time people start to realize that we can no longer afford to be neutral on a moving train.
Agreed.
Agreed. I have spoken to numerous civilians around the state, and I mentioned that there is a balance that needs to be upheld. Currently, that balance is tipping dangerously to the other side, and we are on the precipice of disaster. Government approval is an all-time low. Satisfaction with the police, satisfaction with the legislature, it's all down.
And that's why I say it's no longer time to be neutral. People have to decide what they want for this state, and they have to decide with their vote. So next election, the one plea I have for the people who are listening right now, question everything. Every state rep that comes onto the board, question them. Find out who it is that encouraged them to run. Find out why they're running. Find out if they have any connection whatsoever, or they're being lobbied by any certain government group or any group of interest. Ask these questions, or else we'll make the same mistake we've made before, where we'll have no say, and we really can't do anything about it. That being said, Jack, Miss State Rep Emilie, do you have any parting words?
There is one thing I did want to say. A lot of people are upset that the current state reps have their position and we're unelected, but the issue is nobody stepped up to the plate to oppose us. So unfortunately, that's how it works. We automatically get in. So if more people would actually get involved in politics, we could avoid this situation entirely. But that's not something I can control. That's just how it happened.
And you, Jack?
I'm going to piggyback on both your comments, but I'm going to tackle Emilie's here first. Despite the fact that you may have been brought into office without a proper election taking place, I think you, I think Joanna, I think even in some regards Lilith, have done a good job of being the face of the citizens of the state and taking their best interests at hearts. So I may be your assistant, but I still thank you as a citizen. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, as for you, Mr. Callow, I think you've nailed it on the head. When people do start hearing about which candidates are selected for this upcoming election, it is important for sure to make sure that they do not have special interest groups coming after them that are trying to push some kind of agenda. However, I would also inquire your people when they are questioning who these candidates may be. Determine whether or not they have their own agendas. Determine whether or not those agendas align with those of the citizens of the state, or if it is something that is wholly going to benefit them, their friends, their family. It's just as important.
That being said, this has been Jack Callow with The Exchange. I hope everyone has a good night. And given a few days, we'll see where this bill goes. Expect another article from me very soon. Good night.